Sometimes the cruelest prison isn't built of iron and stone, but of whispers, sideways glances, and the weight of a curse you never asked to carry. The frost-kissed morning air bit at Sable's skin as she scrubbed the courtyard stones of the Ashenvale pack house, her fingers raw and bleeding from the cold. She wondered, not for the first time, if dying would hurt less than living. But death would be too kind for the cursed one. That's what they called her, the she-wolf, born under a black moon, marked by the goddess herself as unworthy. 23 years of existence. And not once had any wolf looked at her with anything but disgust or pity. The curse manifested in ways both subtle and severe. Plants withered when she touched them. Her scent carried the bitter tang of ash and decay. And most damningly, her touch brought searing pain to any wolf who made contact with her skin. Still breathing, cursed one? The voice belonged to Vex, the pack's head warrior, and her most devoted tormentor. He stood above her, his boots deliberately scuffing the stones she'd just cleaned. Pity. I had hoped the cold would finally do what nature should have done at your birth, rid us of your presence. Sable kept her eyes down, a survival mechanism learned through years of brutal lessons. Speaking back only earned worse treatment. Her grandmother, Esme, had taught her that silence was sometimes the only shield the powerless possessed. Answer me when I speak to you, Vex snarled, kicking over her bucket of water. The liquid spread across the courtyard, erasing an hour's work in seconds. I'm sorry, Sable whispered, the words tasting like poison on her tongue. How many times had she apologized for existing? Vex's companion, a cruel-eyed she-wolf named Ravenna, laughed a sound like breaking glass. The Alpha received word this morning, the Wolf King. Draven conducts his territorial inspections this week. He'll arrive tonight. She paused, her smile widening with malice. Alpha Gareth has ordered you confined to the cellars during his visit. Can't have royalty seeing our imperfection, the Wolf King. Sable had heard stories of Draven Nightborn, the wolf who'd unified 7 warring territories through sheer dominance, whose howl could shatter stone, who'd never taken a mate despite being of prime age. They said he was carved from winter itself, beautiful and merciless, with eyes like molten silver that could see through any deception. As if the king would even notice something like her, Vex scoffed. She's not even worth killing. At least that would require acknowledgement of her existence. They left her there, kneeling in the spilled water, her reflection distorted and broken on the wet stones. Sable remained motionless until their footsteps faded, then slowly gathered her supplies. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the rage she kept buried deep, the anger that had nowhere to go but inward. She didn't notice her grandmother watching from the shadows, ancient eyes filled with knowing and secrets that would shatter Sable's understanding of everything she believed about herself. Tonight, Esme whispered to the wind. Tonight, the howling begins. The Ashenvale pack house transformed throughout the day into something almost unrecognizable. Banners of deep crimson and obsidian. The Wolf King's colors hung from every surface. The Great Hall, usually reserved for monthly gatherings and challenges, gleamed with fresh polish and strategic lighting designed to impress. Sable watched the preparations from her usual hiding spot behind the kitchens, where the steam from cooking pots provided some warmth, and the chaos of meal preparation meant fewer people noticed her presence. Her younger half-sister, Lyric, danced through the space in a gown of midnight blue, her silver blonde hair cascading in perfect waves. Do you think he'll choose someone tonight? Lyric asked her mother, Luna Meredith, who preened beside her. They say the Wolf King has rejected every match proposed by the territorial councils. Perhaps he's waiting for true connection. Or perhaps he's simply too selective, Meredith replied, adjusting her daughter's necklace. Either way, you'll be presented with the other eligible females. The alliance between Ashenvale and the Nightborn territory would be advantageous. Neither woman acknowledged Sable's presence, though they stood mere feet away. To them, she was as invisible as furniture, as insignificant as dust. It was both a blessing and a constant wound. What about her? Most werewolf story began with Lyric's voice dropped to a whisper, but Sable's hearing, one of the few wolf traits that functioned properly despite her curse, caught every word. Will father really hide her away? Would you want the Wolf King to see evidence of our pack's shame? Meredith's tone could have frozen fire. The cursed one stays in the cellars. That's final. Sable slipped away before they could notice her eavesdropping. She made her way through the servants' corridors, passages the pack's elite rarely used, toward the small room she shared with 3 other Omega females, who at least tolerated her existence. But Esme intercepted her in a narrow hallway, her weathered hand surprisingly strong as it gripped Sable's arm. Her grandmother's touch didn't burn the way others did, it never had, though Sable had never understood why. "Come with me," Esme commanded, her voice carrying an authority that seemed at odds with her humble position as the pack's eldest healer. "We haven't much time." Quote, "Grandmother, I'm supposed to go to the cellars." "You're supposed to fulfill your destiny," Esme interrupted, pulling her into a storage room cluttered with herbs and medicinal supplies. She thrust a bundle of cloth into Sable's hands. "Wear this tonight, not in the cellars, but in the Great Hall." Sable's eyes widened. "I can't," Alpha Gareth ordered. Alpha Gareth is a fool who wouldn't recognize divine intervention if the goddess herself descended to explain it. Esme's eyes, they're still sharp despite her age, bore into Sable's. "Your mother sacrificed everything to hide you, to buy you time until the right moment." End quote. "That moment is tonight." "My mother died of fever when I was an infant," Sable said automatically, reciting the story she'd been told her entire life. "Your mother, Callista, died protecting a secret." Esme's voice softened. "You are not cursed, child. You are sealed. There is a vast difference." Before Sable could process this revelation, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Esme pressed a small vial into her palm. "Drink this an hour before the presentation. It will ease certain reactions. Now go. Quickly. Hide these items and trust me when I say that tonight everything you believe about yourself will be proven false." Sable fled, clutching the bundle and vial, her mind reeling. Sealed, not cursed? What did that even mean? And why would her grandmother risk both their lives by suggesting she defy the Alpha's direct order? In her shared room, she unwrapped the bundle carefully. Inside lay a gown of deepest gray, simple in design but crafted from fabric that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. It was beautiful in an understated way, nothing like the elaborate gowns the eligible females would wear, but somehow more striking for its simplicity. Hidden in the folds, she found a note in her grandmother's spidery handwriting. "Some seals can only be broken by recognition. Trust the howl." Outside, the sun began its descent toward the horizon. In a few hours, the Wolf King would arrive, and Sable faced an impossible choice: obey the Alpha who tormented her entire life, or trust the grandmother, whose eyes held secrets that might finally explain why she'd always felt like a stranger in her own skin. She clutched the vial, feeling its contents slosh gently. The liquid inside glowed faintly silver, like captured moonlight. What did she have to lose? Her life was already a living death. Perhaps it was time to risk everything for the possibility, however slim, that she might be something more than the cursed one. The great hall pulsed with nervous energy, as wolves from neighboring packs filled every available space. Sable pressed herself against the wall behind a decorative column, the gray gown making her blend with the shadows. She'd consumed her grandmother's potion an hour earlier, and the effect had been immediate. The constant burning sensation beneath her skin had cooled to a manageable warmth, and for the first time in her life, she felt almost normal. Almost. "All eligible females, form presentation lines." Beta Corwin's voice boomed across the hall. Dozens of she-wolves moved into formation, their expensive gowns rustling like leaves in wind. Lyric took position near the front, her practiced smile perfectly calibrated between demure and confident. Sable should leave. She should retreat to the cellars before Alpha Gareth noticed her defiance. But something kept her rooted in place, a pull she couldn't name, drawing her forward, despite every survival instinct screaming retreat. The massive oak doors swung open, and the temperature in the room plummeted. He entered like winter-given form, Draven Nightborn, Wolf King of the 7 territories, taller than any wolf Sable had ever seen. He moved with lethal grace that made seasoned warriors look clumsy in comparison. His hair was black as a starless night, his features carved with brutal precision. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath, silver as mercury, ancient and burning with an intensity that seemed to strip away pretense and see straight through to the soul. Those eyes swept across the assembled wolves with dismissive efficiency, cataloging and rejecting in the same glance. Alphas bowed, betas dropped their gazes. Even the proudest warriors felt the weight of dominance that rolled off him like physical pressure. Sable felt it too, that crushing authority that demanded submission. But beneath it, something else stirred. Her wolf, dormant and silent for 23 years, suddenly surged against whatever seal held it captive. The sensation was so violent she gasped, drawing unwanted attention. Draven's head snapped toward her position with predatory precision. His gaze locked onto her hiding spot behind the column, and the world contracted to that single point of connection. Everything stopped. The Wolf King's nostrils flared. His entire body went rigid, silver eyes flaring with something that looked impossibly like shock. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Sable couldn't comprehend but felt in every nerve ending. "You," he said, his voice deeper than thunder, softer than silk. The single word carried across the silent hall like a pronouncement of fate. Alpha Gareth stepped forward quickly, panic clear in his movements. "Your Majesty, welcome to Ashenvale. May I present our finest unmated females for your consideration?" "I said you." Draven's gaze never wavered from Sable. "Step forward." This couldn't be happening. This had to be a nightmare. Sable's legs refused to move, frozen by terror, and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. "Your Majesty," Gareth tried again, his voice rising with desperation. "That is no one of consequence. Merely a cursed Omega, we." The growl that erupted from Draven's chest silenced every voice in the hall. It wasn't threatening, it was promise, dark and absolute. "When I give a command, I expect immediate obedience. The female behind the column, come, here, now." Sable's body moved before her mind could process the decision. She stepped out from her hiding place, every eye in the hall tracking her movement with expressions ranging from shock to horror to fury. Lyric's perfect composure cracked, her face contorting with disbelief. Meredith looked ready to shift and attack right there. Each step toward the Wolf King felt like walking through water, reality becoming thick and strange. He watched her approach with an intensity that should have been terrifying but instead felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering lost. She stopped 10 feet away, close enough to see the fine scars that marked his knuckles, the silver rings adorning his fingers, the pulse beating at his throat. Close enough to catch his scent: winter storms, ancient forests, and something wild that called to the dormant thing sleeping inside her. "Closer," he commanded, his voice gentling in a way that made the watching wolves exchange confused glances. Sable took 3 more steps. Now she stood within arm's reach, her head tilted back to meet those mercury eyes that seemed to see everything she'd ever tried to hide. "Your name," he said. And it wasn't quite a question. "Power." "Sable," she whispered. "Sable Ashwood." "Sable," he repeated, and the way he said it made it sound like a prayer, a curse, a claim all at once. His hand lifted slowly, giving her time to retreat. When she couldn't, his fingers ghosted across her cheek. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Power erupted from the point of contact, silver lightning that spiderwebbed across her skin. The seal that had bound her for 23 years cracked like stressed glass. Sable screamed not in pain, but in release, as something vast and ancient unfurled inside her consciousness. Draven jerked back, his eyes wide with something that looked like recognition and reverence. "Impossible," he breathed. What's happening?" Sable gasped, her body trembling as power surged through channels that had been closed her entire life. Her hands blazed with silver light that didn't burn but illuminated. The scent of ash and decay that had clung to her evaporated, replaced by something clean and electric, like lightning-struck rain. "You're silvered," Draven said, his voice carrying across the deathly silent hall. "Ancient bloodline. Born once every 1,000 years under specific celestial alignments." He turned to face the assembled pack, his expression shifting from wonder to cold fury. "Potters. And you called her cursed?" The private chamber Alpha Gareth hastily provided for the Wolf King's use was the finest. The pack house offered all rich woods and carefully chosen furnishings meant to impress. visiting dignitaries. None of it registered for Sable, whose entire world had narrowed to the impossible reality unfolding around her. Draven had dismissed everyone with a finality that brooked no argument, even sending away his own guards. Now they stood alone, the door closed against curious ears, and Sable felt the full weight of his attention settle on her like a physical thing. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair. Plast. When she hesitated, his expression softened infinitesimally. "Please, you're shaking." She was. The adrenaline that had carried her through the last hour was crashing, leaving her legs weak and her mind spinning. Sable sank into the offered chair, grateful when her knees stopped threatening to buckle. Draven moved to a side table, pouring water from a crystal pitcher. He brought it to her, his movements careful, as if approaching a spooked animal. "Drink. The seal breaking is traumatic for the body, even when done gradually. Yours shattered all at once." Sable accepted the glass with trembling hands, noting absently that his touch no longer burned. Instead, his fingers against hers felt right. Warm without pain, comforting without the agony that had defined every physical contact in her life. "I don't understand, Anne," she said after draining half the glass. "What's silvered? Why did you call me forward?" Draven pulled another chair, close, not too close, giving her space but eliminating the formal distance expected between a Wolf King and an Omega nobody. "Tell me first what you know about your parents. Your real history. Not the lies you've been fed." "My mother died when I was an infant. Fever," they said. "My father never acknowledged me. Alpha Gareth is actually my uncle, though he's never claimed the relation publicly." The words came automatically, worn smooth from years of repetition. "I was born under a black moon, marked as cursed. My touch brings pain. Plants wither. I'm sealed," Draven interrupted gently. "Not cursed. Sealed by blood magic so powerful that only one thing could break it." His mercury eyes captured hers, the recognition of a true mate. The glass slipped from Sable's fingers, shattering on the floor. Neither of them moved to clean it. "That's not possible," she whispered. "True mates are rare. And you're the Wolf King. I'm nobody. I'm cursed." "You are silvered," he said firmly, "an ancient bloodline that predates the territories, predates the hierarchies we've built. Silvered wolves are born with power so vast it could reshape reality, if left unchecked. To protect the infant, to give them time to grow strong enough to handle their gifts, a blood sacrifice seal is performed." His jaw tightened, "Usually by the mother." Sable's breath caught. "My mother." "Your mother, Callista, was likely silvered herself. She would have known what you were from the moment of your birth. The black moon is actually a sign of blessing, not curse. The seal manifests as a parent curse to hide you in plain sight." Draven leaned forward, his intensity pinning her in place. "They didn't torture you out of cruelty, Sable. They did it because some part of them sensed your power and feared it. Denity, quote, but the pain I caused was the seal protecting itself. Any wolf who touched you risked triggering premature breaking. Perfect it is, which could have killed you before you were ready." He reached out slowly, palm up, offering, "Touch me now. Feel the difference." Clotislav. Sable stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite. 23 years of conditioning screamed at her to pull back, to protect him from her curse. But something deeper, something newly awakened, urged her forward. She placed her hand in his. Warmth flooded up her arm, but not the searing agony she'd known her entire life. This was different, a connection that felt like coming home, like finding a missing piece of herself she hadn't known was absent. Power hummed between them, silver light dancing across their joined hands. "This is impossible," she breathed, even as tears began tracking down her face. "I'm nobody. I'm nothing. You're everything," Draven countered, and there was something fierce in his voice, something possessive that should have frightened her, but instead felt like safety. "You're silvered, you're powerful beyond measure, and you're mine." The claiming word hung between them, weighted with meaning. Sable's newly awakened instincts understood, even if her conscious mind struggled to process. "I've been searching for you for 7 years, Draven continued, his thumb stroking gently across her knuckles. Since the night I became Wolf King and felt a pull towards something incomplete, something missing. Every territory I united, every pack I visited, I was looking for this. He lifted their joined hands. For you. But why me? The question emerged broken, raw, with years of believing herself worthless. You could have anyone. Why would fate pair you with someone so perfect? He interrupted. Someone who understands what it means to be judged by circumstance rather than character. Someone who has survived impossible odds. Someone whose power, once fully awakened, will equal or exceed my own. His expression turned wry. The goddess has a sense of humor, pairing the most dominant wolf alive with the one wolf who won't automatically submit to him. As if to prove his point, Sable felt no compulsion to lower her gaze, to show deference. The crushing dominance she'd felt from him earlier had evaporated, replaced by this strange equality that defied everything she'd been taught about pack hierarchy. What happens now? She asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Now, Draven said, his expression hardening as he thought of the wolves beyond this door. Now we deal with the pack that abused my mate for 23 years. And then his eyes blaze silver fire. Then we discover exactly what a silvered wolf can do when given the freedom to be what she was always meant to be. Esme entered without knocking, her ancient eyes taking in the scene with knowing acceptance. Draven tensed at the intrusion but didn't challenge her. Something in the old woman's bearing commanded respect despite her humble appearance. So, Esme said, setting down a leather-bound journal on the table between them. The seal is broken. Earlier than I'd hoped, but perhaps at exactly the right moment. She turned to Sable. You have questions, child. I have answers that should have been given years ago. Sable's hand unconsciously tightened around Draven's, drawing strength from the contact. You knew. This whole time, you knew what I was. I knew what your mother was, Esme corrected, settling into a chair with the careful movements of the elderly. Callista came to Ashenvale fleeing the purge. You're too young to remember, but 30 years ago, the territorial councils grew terrified of silvered wolves. Too powerful, they said. Too dangerous to exist without control. Her expression darkened. They called it regulation. In truth, it was genocide, clenched. I was 13 when the purge happened. My father led our territory's efforts to identify and neutralize silvered bloodlines. Bitterness laced his words. He called it necessary protection. I called it murder. Your father was many things, but he wasn't unique in his fear, Esme said. Most alphas supported the purge. They convinced themselves that silvered wolves threatened the natural order, that such power couldn't be allowed to exist unchecked. She opened the journal, revealing pages of careful handwriting. Callista was 19 when she fled, pregnant, alone, with hunters tracking her across 3 territories. She came here? Sable leaned forward, hungry for any scrap of information about the mother she'd never known. She came here because Ashenvale was considered too insignificant to harbor refugees. Alpha, Gareth was young then, ambitious, easy to manipulate. Esme's lips twisted. Powers. She made a bargain with him. She'd bind her power completely, live as an Omega, serve the pack faithfully. In return, he'd protect her child. Power. But she died, Sable said softly. The seal she placed on you required constant reinforcement, Esme explained. Every week, she'd perform a small blood ritual, feeding her own life force into the binding to keep it strong. She knew it was killing her. She accepted that cost willingly. The old woman's eyes glistened. Promise. She made me promise to watch over you, to ensure the seal held until her true mate found her. Draven finished, understanding dawning in his expression. Callista must have been a seer as well. She knew I would come. Esme nodded. 3 days before she died, she told me about him, the silver-eyed king who would unite the territories and recognize the treasure hidden in plain sight. She looked at Draven with something like approval. She said he would be worthy of her daughter's power. I prayed she was right. Pain I caused others, Sable said, the pieces finally fitting together in her mind. That was the seal defending itself? Partially, Esme confirmed, but also testing. The seal was designed to cause pain to anyone whose touch might threaten premature breaking, essentially anyone with significant power or ill intent. I could touch you because my intent was protection. Children could touch you because they posed no threat. Sable remembered the few moments of kindness in her life, the young pups who would sometimes approach her without fear, the elderly Omega who'd once held her hand without flinching. Not because they were special, but because the seal recognized safety in their innocence. What about the withering plants? She asked. The scent of decay? Down. Manifestations of sealed power trying to escape, Draven said, his analytical mind already working through the implications. Silvered wolves are connected to life force itself, Compling. When that power is bound, it can't flow naturally. It stagnates, corrupts, manifests as death rather than growth, power. And now? Sable looked down at her hands, still glowing faintly with silver light. What am I supposed to do with this power? And whatever you choose, Esme said firmly. That's the point of the seal. It buys time for the silvered wolf to mature, power, to develop their own moral compass before accessing world-shaking power. She fixed Sable with a stern look. Your mother gave her life to grant you that choice. Don't waste it. A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Your Majesty, Beta Corwin's voice carried through the wood. Alpha Gareth requests an audience. He says it's urgent. Draven's expression went cold. Tell Alpha Gareth he may request all he wishes. I'll grant him audience when I'm ready, which will be after I've decided whether his treatment of my mate warrants his continued existence. Silence followed this pronouncement. Then, more hesitantly, Understood, Your Majesty. After the footsteps retreated, Draven turned back to Sable. You're not ready for public confrontation yet. The power is too new, too unstable. We need time for you to learn control. We don't have time, Esme interjected, her voice taking on the distant quality of prophecy. The breaking of her seal sent out a signal, like a beacon to those who can sense such things. Every silvered hunter who survived the purge will know she's awakened, and they will come. Let them, Draven growled, his protective instincts flaring. They'll find the Wolf King between them and their prey. You can't fight them all, Esme warned. The hunters were chosen specifically for their ability to kill silvered wolves. They know our weaknesses. Then what do you suggest? Sable asked, fear clawing at her newfound hope. Was she simply trading one nightmare for another? Esme's ancient eyes sparkled with something that might have been mischief. I suggest we give them exactly what they expect. A newly awakened silvered wolf, confused and frightened, easy prey. She smiled, showing teeth. And then we show them what happens when you underestimate a wolf who's survived 23 years of hell and emerged stronger for it. Draven looked between the two women, then slowly smiled, an expression of savage anticipation. I think I'm going to enjoy watching you work together. First, Esme said, pulling several more items from her seemingly bottomless pockets. We need to teach Sable the basics. She has days at most before the hunters arrive, maybe hours. Then we'd better start immediately, Sable said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. She'd spent her entire life running, hiding, accepting abuse. That ended now. Whatever power she possessed, whatever destiny her mother had died to protect, she would claim it. She would never be helpless again. The training began in the depths of night, in a clearing deep in Ashenvale territory where Esme promised they wouldn't be observed. Draven had wanted to take Sable immediately to his own lands, but Esme insisted the transition needed to happen here, in the place where the seal had been maintained for over 2 decades. Power has memory, the old woman explained as they walked through moonlit forest. This land knows you. It will be easier to access your gifts here than in unfamiliar territory. Sable felt the truth of it. The earth beneath her feet hummed with welcome rather than rejection. Trees that had withered at her approach. Her entire life now seemed to lean toward her, their branches rustling in a wind she couldn't feel. What you're about to experience will be overwhelming, Draven warned, his hand steady at her back as they entered the clearing. Your wolf has been caged for 23 years. When you finally shift, it will be intense. Will it hurt? Sable asked. Remembering stories of first shifts, the agony of bones breaking and reforming, the disorientation, of suddenly experiencing the world through enhanced senses. Yes, he said honestly. But not the way you think. The pain won't be physical. It will be emotional, feeling everything you've suppressed, all the rage and grief and longing you've buried to survive. It will. Esme began drawing symbols in the dirt around the clearing's perimeter, muttering words in a language Sable didn't recognize. These wards will contain the power surge when you shift. Without them, every wolf in 3 territories will feel it. And that would be bad because we want the hunters to underestimate you, Draven reminded her. Let them think you're a confused, newly awakened, silvered, fumbling with unfamiliar power. They'll expect an easy kill. His smile turned predatory. We'll educate them otherwise. Sable moved to the center of the clearing, her heart hammering against her ribs. 23 years of being told. Her wolf was broken, malformed, wrong. 23 years of believing she was fundamentally flawed. What if I can't? The fear escaped before she could cage it. What if the seal damaged something permanently? Esme finished her warding and straightened. The only thing damaged was their perception of you. Your wolf is whole, powerful, and very, very angry at being caged. Trust it. Close your eyes, Draven instructed. Feel for the place inside you where your wolf lives. It's probably raging right now, demanding freedom. Sable obeyed, turning her attention inward. At first, she felt nothing, just the familiar emptiness that had defined her existence. Then, gradually, she became aware of something vast and furious, pushing against invisible barriers. Her wolf wasn't small or weak or broken. It was massive, ancient, and absolutely done with being suppressed. Draven's voice seemed to come from far away. Now stop fighting it. Stop protecting everyone else from yourself. Let it free. The suggestion terrified her. Every instinct screamed that releasing her wolf meant hurting people, destroying things, becoming the monster they'd always said she was. Sable. Esme's voice cut through the panic. Your mother's last words to me were these. Tell her she's not the curse, she's the cure. Trust that. Something inside her cracked, not the seal, but her own internal resistance. Years of self-hatred, of believing herself toxic, of accepting blame for circumstances beyond her control. All of it shattered, like stressed glass. The shift hit her like a tidal wave. Pain exploded through every nerve ending, but Draven had been right, it wasn't physical. It was the agony of feeling everything at once. The loneliness of childhood, the humiliation of endless abuse, the bone-deep exhaustion of living without hope. Every tear she'd never shed, every scream she'd swallowed, every moment of wondering if dying would hurt less than living. She felt all of it. And then, finally, she felt rage. Power erupted from her transforming body in visible waves. Silver light blazed from her skin, so bright that Draven and Esme had to shield their eyes. The wards Esme had drawn blazed to life, containing the energy surge, but barely. The symbols crackled with strain. Sable's body reshaped itself, bones lengthening and reforming, but there was no agony in the physical transformation. That part felt natural, right? Like finally stretching after being cramped in a too small space for decades. When the light faded, and she opened eyes that now saw in spectrums she'd never imagined, Sable understood why they'd called silvered wolves dangerous. Her wolf form was enormous, larger than any alpha she'd ever seen, including Draven. Her fur wasn't merely silver. It was luminescent, seeming to generate its own light. Each strand appeared crystalline, as if carved from frozen starlight. Her paws left prints that glowed with residual power, and when she moved, reality itself seemed to bend slightly around her. She was beautiful. She was terrifying. She was everything they'd feared she might become. Magnificent, Draven breathed. And when Sable turned to look at him, she saw his own wolf pushing forward in his eyes, not challenging, but acknowledging, recognizing an equal. Asterisk. Can you hear me? Asterisk. His voice resonated in her mind through the mate bond, and Sable's newly awakened wolf understood instinctively how to respond. Asterisk, I can hear everything. Asterisk, she replied, and it was true. The forest hummed with life she'd never perceived, each heartbeat, each breath, each whisper of wind through leaves. She could hear conversations happening miles away in the pack house, could sense the locations of every wolf in the territory, could feel the very heartbeat of the earth itself. Asterisk. How do you feel? Draven asked. Sable considered the question. She felt powerful. She felt free. But most of all, I feel angry. She admitted. 23 years of my life, stolen because they were afraid. My mother's death, meaningless if I don't use this power for something that matters. Asterisk, asterisk. Then let's make it matter. Asterisk. Draven responded. Asterisk. But first, you need to learn control. Silvered wolves don't just have enhanced physical abilities. You have gifts that defy natural law. Asterisk. Esme approached carefully. No fear in her ancient eyes. Try to shift back. It should be easier now. Your body remembers both forms. Sable focused, and the transition happened smoothly, almost effortlessly. One moment she was wolf, the next she stood on two legs again. The gray gown Esme had provided somehow intact despite the violent transformation. How? She looked down at herself, confused. Silvered wolves can shift their clothing with them. Esme explained. You're not just changing shape, you're temporarily rewriting reality. Your clothes become part of that new reality. What else can I do? Sable asked, testing the limits of her new awareness. She could still feel the enhanced senses, even in human form, still perceive layers of reality she'd been blind to before. That, Esme said with a mysterious smile, is what we're about to discover. Dawn broke over Ashenvale with Sable standing in the center of the pack house courtyard, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. Word of her transformation had spread through the pack like wildfire, and wolves gathered at a cautious distance as their expressions, ranging from shock to fear to barely contained hostility. Draven stood at her right hand, every inch the Wolf King intimidating and immovable. Esme flanked her left, having shed her elderly healer persona for something more commanding. Together they formed a triangle of power that made even the boldest warriors hesitate. Alpha Gareth emerged from the pack house, Meredith and Lyric trailing behind him. His face had gone ruddy with rage and panic, a dangerous combination in an alpha unused to being challenged. You were ordered to the cellars, he snarled at Sable, ignoring Draven entirely a fatal miscalculation. You deliberately defied a direct command from your alpha. She has no alpha, Draven said coldly. She never did. Silvered wolves exist outside pack hierarchy. They answer to no one's authority but their own and their mates. And she's a member of my pack, Gareth insisted. Born here, raised here, tortured here, Sable interrupted, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. 23 years of silence had ended. Starved, beaten, isolated, and told daily that my existence was a curse. You knew what I was, didn't you, Uncle? A familial term made several wolves gasp. Gareth's carefully maintained fiction that Sable was unrelated, merely an unfortunate omega the pack tolerated out of charity, crumbled in an instant. My mother came to you for protection, Sable continued, stepping forward. Gareth instinctively stepped back. She made a bargain, her service and silence in exchange for my safety. But you didn't protect me. You allowed your pack to brutalize a child. You were sealed, Gareth spat, his composure fracturing. We couldn't risk you awakening prematurely. The fear, the isolation, it kept you suppressed, kept you safe. Safe? Silver light flickered around Sable's clenched fists. You called 23 years of hell safe? You could have told me the truth. You could have prepared me for what I was instead of letting me believe I was cursed. If we'd treated you well, someone might have looked too closely, might have recognized what you were, Meredith interjected, her voice sharp. The hunters were still active. Any sign that a silvered wolf survived the purge would have brought them down on all of us. So you sacrificed me to protect yourselves, Sable said flatly. Made a child into a scapegoat to maintain your own safety. We kept you alive, Gareth insisted. That's more than most silvered pups got. You kept me barely alive, Sable corrected. There's a difference. She looked around at the gathered wolves, so many faces that had watched her suffer, participated in her torment, or simply stood by and done nothing. I came here this morning to give you all a choice. You're in no position to offer choices, Vex called from the crowd, though he remained carefully distant. You might be silvered, but you're barely awakened. Untrained. We could. He never finished the sentence. Sable's eyes blazed silver, and Vex collapsed mid-word. His body seizing as power crashed into him like a physical blow. Perfider. She hadn't touched him, hadn't even moved, just willed it, and reality obeyed. I am fully aware of my inexperience, Sable said calmly as Vex gasped on the ground. Which is why I brought help. She gestured to Draven and Esme. My mate, who has forgotten more about combat than this pack has collectively learned. And my grandmother, who has been training silvered wolves for longer than most of you have been alive. She released Vex, who scrambled backward into the crowd. Here's your choice, Sable continued. Those who participated in my abuse, who actively tormented me, rather than simply ignoring me, you have 1 hour to leave Ashenvale territory, voluntarily, permanently. Thanks which, they see Omaras. You can't exile pack members, Gareth protested. Only an alpha can. I'm not exiling them, Sable said softly. I'm offering them a head start before I hunt them down and demonstrate exactly what a silvered wolf does to those who mistake mercy for weakness. The threat hung in the air, all the more terrifying for being delivered in a calm, conversational tone. The rest of you? Sable's gaze swept across the gathered wolves, those who were simply bystanders, who said nothing but did no direct harm. You may stay. But understand that Ashenvale is no longer what it was. The hierarchies that allowed my suffering will be dismantled. The traditions that excuse cruelty as pack discipline will end. This is insanity, Meredith hissed. You can't just walk in here and demand we restructure our entire— I'm not demanding anything, Sable interrupted. I'm informing you of reality. Alpha Gareth's authority ends today. Either he steps down voluntarily, or I challenge him for pack leadership. His choice. Gareth's face purpled further. You? Challenge me? You're not even a proper pack member, let alone— I invoke the right of reclamation, Sable said, using a phrase Esme had taught her during the night's training. Ancient law, predating territories. A wolf who has been gravely wronged by their pack's leadership may challenge that leader for authority or for release from pack bonds. That law hasn't been invoked in 300 years, Gareth sputtered. Because silvered wolves haven't existed openly in 300 years, Esme pointed out, the law was written by and for silvered bloodlines. It supersedes modern pack structure. I don't want your pack, Sable said, addressing Gareth directly. I want nothing from you except this: acknowledgement that you failed in your duty to protect me. Public admission that my suffering was not necessary, not justified, and not my fault. The request seemed to stun the gathered wolves more than the threats had. Gareth stared at her, calculation clear in his eyes. Admit fault publicly? An alpha's authority rested on perceived infallibility. And if I refuse? He asked carefully. Then I challenge you, defeat you, and take your pack anyway, Sable said simply. And then I exile every wolf who stood by and watched a child suffer. Your choice, uncle. Humble yourself now, or lose everything. The silence stretched, brittle and tense. Finally, Gareth's shoulders sagged in defeat. You're right, he said, the words clearly costing him. We failed you. I failed you. Your suffering was— he swallowed hard— unnecessary and wrong. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't even adequate, but it was acknowledgement, and that mattered more than Sable had expected. Thank you, she said quietly. Then, louder, I, Sable Ashwood, formally reject my bonds to the Ashenvale pack. I choose freedom. I choose my mate. I choose myself. The formal words of pack rejection echoed across the courtyard. As they faded, Sable felt something fundamental shift inside her chains she hadn't known existed, finally falling away. The hour starts now, she said to those who had actively tormented her. Run! Vex and Ravenna were the first to flee, followed by a handful of others. They shifted mid-run, their panicked wolves streaking toward the territory border. Let them spread the word, Draven said, watching them go. Let every pack know what happens when they abuse the vulnerable. As the sun climbed higher, Sable stood in the courtyard, where she'd spent countless mornings scrubbing stones with bleeding hands, and for the first time in her life, she felt free. The journey to Nightborn territory took 2 days through mountain passes that made Ashenvale's forests look tame by comparison. Sable rode with Draven in the lead vehicle, part of a convoy that included his elite guard and several supply wagons. Esme had insisted on coming, claiming she needed to oversee Sable's continued training. "Tell me about your home," Sable said on the second morning, watching the landscape transform from rolling hills to jagged peaks. "What should I expect?" Draven's expression softened. Something Sable was learning happened rarely, and only when they were alone or with trusted company. Nightborn is different from what you've known. Larger, more diverse. We have 7 sub-territories now, each with their own alpha who answers to me. That sounds complicated. It is. Unification didn't come easily. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Some territories joined willingly, seeing the benefit of alliance. Others required persuasion. "You mean conquest?" "I mean survival," he corrected. 10 years ago, the territories were at constant war, resources dwindling, populations declining. We were eating ourselves alive through endless conflict. He glanced at her. "I offered a better way: united leadership, shared resources, protection for the vulnerable. Those who accepted thrived. Those who refused. What happened to them? Their alphas were given a choice: join us or be replaced by someone who would." His tone carried no apology. "I make no claims to being gentle, Sable. I've done what was necessary to protect my people." "I'm not judging you," she said quietly. "I just want to understand the world I'm entering." His expression gentled. "You're not entering my world. You're becoming an equal part of it. As my mate, you'll have authority that rivals my own, especially once word spreads that you're silvered." "About that," Sable shifted uncomfortably. "Won't your pack be concerned about you mating someone so new to all this? I barely know how to be a wolf, let alone whatever a silvered wolf is supposed to be." "They'll be thrilled," Draven said confidently. "I've been refusing matches for 7 years. My council was beginning to worry I'd never produce an heir. Your arrival solves multiple problems." "Oh, good," Sable said dryly. "I'm a problem solver." He laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his usually severe features. "You're more than that. But yes, politically speaking, your existence is advantageous." He turned serious. "More importantly, silvered wolves are legendary. Most of my pack members have only heard stories. They'll be awed. Or terrified. Both." Esme interjected from the back seat, having been quiet until now. "Silvered wolves inspire strong reactions. Get used to it." As they crested a final ridge, Nightborn territory revealed itself in the valley below. Sable's breath caught. Prive, where Ashenvale had been modest and rustic, Nightborn was a city: crystalline towers, rising from volcanic rock, structures that seemed to grow organically from the mountain itself. Waterfalls cascaded between levels, their mist creating permanent rainbows. The entire place hummed with energy she could feel even from a distance. "Koss. It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's home," Draven said simply. "You're home now, if you want it." The convoy descended into the valley, and Sable noticed wolves beginning to line the road, not threatening, but curious. As word of their approach spread, more appeared until hundreds stood watching their arrival. "They know about me?" Sable asked nervously. "I sent runners ahead," Draven confirmed. "They know I've found my mate. They know she's silvered. They don't know your story yet. That's yours to share when and how you choose." The main gates were wrought from black iron and silver, depicting wolves in various forms of transformation. They swung open silently as the convoy approached, revealing a courtyard that made Ashenvale's look like a muddy pen. Wolves in both forms filled the space: alphas, betas, deltas, omegas, all gathered to witness the Wolf King's return. Sable felt the weight of hundreds of eyes as she emerged from the vehicle, her simple traveling clothes suddenly feeling inadequate. Draven appeared at her side immediately, his hand finding the small of her back, a gesture of support and public claim. "Nightborn, P." His voice carried effortlessly across the courtyard. "Behold my mate, Sable of the silvered bloodline." The response was immediate: wolves dropping to one knee in waves, the gesture of ultimate respect. Sable felt overwhelmed by the sheer number, by the obvious reverence in the act. Rise, she said, finding her voice. Please, I'm not used to this. A figure emerged from the crowd, a tall woman with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that assessed Sable with sharp intelligence. Your Majesty? She addressed Draven, then turned to Sable with a slight smile. My lady, I'm Valeria, second in command of Nightborn forces. Welcome home. Thank you, Sable said, grateful for the warmth in the greeting, though I'm not sure I know how to be. Whatever I'm supposed to be here. You're supposed to be yourself, Valeria said firmly. The rest we'll figure out together. She glanced at Draven. The council requests audience when you're ready. No emergency, but they're eager to meet their new queen. Can give us an hour, Draven said. My mate needs time to settle in. Valeria nodded and melted back into the crowd, which was beginning to disperse now that the initial curiosity had been satisfied. Draven guided Sable through towering doors into the fortress proper. The interior matched the exterior's grandeur, soaring ceilings, walls embedded with crystals that caught and amplified light. Everything designed with both beauty and function. Wolves nodded respectfully as they passed, but no one approached, giving them space. Your chambers, Draven said, opening doors that revealed a suite larger than the entire servant wing of Ashenvale's pack house. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the entire valley. Furniture that looked both comfortable and elegant filled the space. A massive bed dominated one wall, and Sable felt her face heat at its implications. Our chambers, Draven corrected gently, noting her reaction. If that's acceptable to you, I understand this is happening fast. It's acceptable, Sable interrupted. The mate bond hummed contentedly at the thought of sharing space with him. And honestly, after 23 years of sleeping in cramped, cold rooms, the idea of a comfortable bed and safe company sounded like paradise. A knock at the door preceded Esme's entrance. The wards are in place, she announced. I've keyed them to recognize you both. No one gets in without permission. Wards? Sable asked. Protection. Tays, Draven explained. The hunters Esme warned about are real threats. Until we know their movements, we're taking precautions. Speaking of which, Esme said, settling into a chair with the ease of someone who'd known Draven long enough to be informal. We need to accelerate Sable's training. She's powerful but untrained. That combination is dangerous for everyone, including her. I thought I did well in the courtyard at Ashenvale, Sable protested. You did, Esme agreed. But you were operating on instinct and emotion. Real control requires understanding the theory behind your gifts, practicing until they become second nature. How long will that take? Normally? Years, Esme said bluntly. We have weeks at best before the hunters locate us, so we'll use shortcuts, dangerous ones, but necessary. Siomaris, Esme said bluntly. Esme said bluntly, but in face of the 10 for lettuces, and in face of the 10 for maces. What kind of shortcuts? Draven asked, his protective instincts clearly triggered. Accelerated integration, Esme said, forcing Sable to access her full power repeatedly until her body and mind adapt. It's agonizing, risky, and occasionally fatal. No, Draven said flatly. Yes, Sable countered, surprising them both. If the alternative is being hunted as easy prey, then yes. I didn't survive 23 years of hell just to die now because I was too afraid of pain. Draven looked ready to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. But I'm present for every session. If it becomes too dangerous, I'll be too dead to care about your objections, Sable said with dark humor. But I appreciate the concern. That night, as Sable stood at the windows overlooking her new home, Draven joined her. Are you all right? He asked softly. I don't know, she admitted. Everything's happening so fast. 2 days ago, I was scrubbing floors and accepting abuse as normal. Now I'm supposedly a queen of a territory I've never seen, mated to a wolf I barely know, preparing to fight enemies I don't understand. We can slow down, Draven offered. The mating bond doesn't require immediate completion. We can take time. That's not what I meant, Sable interrupted. I'm not afraid of you, or of this. She gestured between them. The mate bond feels right in a way nothing else in my life ever has. It's everything else that's overwhelming. Then we face everything else together, he said simply, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home. Whatever comes next, you're not alone anymore. For the first time in her life, Sable believed it. The Nightborn Council chamber was circular, designed so no seat held prominence over another, a detail Sable appreciated as she entered beside Draven. 7 alphas, each representing a sub-territory, occupied elegant chairs arranged in a perfect circle. An 8th chair sat empty, clearly meant for Draven, and a 9th equally prominent had been added for her. Bold, Esme murmured appreciatively. He's declaring your equal status before you've even spoken to them. Sable took her seat, spine straight, channeling every ounce of composure she could muster. These weren't simple packwolves, they were alphas who'd submitted to Draven through force or politics. And they were now evaluating whether his mate warranted similar respect. Esteemed council, Draven began, his formal tone a far cry from the gentleness he showed Sable in private. Kind. I present my mate, Sable, silvered bloodline, last of her kind. The alphas studied her with varying degrees of curiosity and skepticism. The oldest among them, a gray-haired man named Casimir, leaned forward. With respect, Your Majesty, claims of silvered bloodline are significant. How do we verify this isn't simply wishful thinking? You doubt my word? Draven's voice went dangerously soft. I question unusual circumstances, Casimir countered diplomatically. The silvered were exterminated. Thoroughly. For one to suddenly appear, conveniently as your mate, after years of unsuccessful searches. I'll demonstrate, Sable interrupted, surprising everyone including herself. She stood, moving to the chamber's center. What would you accept as proof? Silvered wolves possess reality-warping abilities. A female alpha named Thora said thoughtfully. Perhaps you could show us something impossible. Define impossible, Sable said, her newly awakened instincts already reaching for the power thrumming beneath her skin. Make it rain, another alpha suggested mockingly. Indoors, without water sources. Sable closed her eyes, feeling for the moisture in the air, the underlying patterns of reality that her silvered nature could now perceive and manipulate. It was like pulling threads in a tapestry. If you knew which ones to tug, you could reshape the entire pattern. She pulled. Rain began falling from the ceiling, impossible. Physics-defying rain that appeared from nothing and splashed against the stone floor. The droplets were real, soaking the alphas who scrambled back in shock. Sable held it for 30 seconds, then released her hold, and the rain stopped instantly. Is that sufficient proof? She asked mildly, returning to her seat without acknowledging the impressed murmurs. Impressive, Casimir admitted. But party tricks aside, what do you actually bring to Nightborn, besides your bloodline? The blunt question could have been insulting, but Sable appreciated the directness. Honestly, I don't know yet. I've been awakened for 3 days. I barely understand my own abilities, let alone how to apply them governmentally. Her candor seemed to surprise them. At least you're honest, Thora said. Many would have invented credentials. I'm not interested in pretending, Sable replied. I grew up being told I was worthless. I've spent my entire life believing I had nothing to offer. Discovering I'm silvered doesn't magically grant me political acumen or leadership experience. She met each alpha's gaze in turn. What I do have is perspective. I know what it's like to be powerless. I know what systems look like from the bottom, and that qualifies you to help rule 7 territories. How? Casimir pressed. Pori. Because those territories are full of wolves who are at the bottom, Sable said quietly. Omegas who have no voice. Weak wolves who get stepped on. Children born with the wrong designation or abilities. The vulnerable who slip through cracks in systems designed by and for the powerful. Her voice strengthened. I can see those cracks. I can identify the places where your governance fails the weakest members. And I can push for change. Change isn't always welcome, Thora observed. No, Sable agreed. But it's often necessary. She leaned forward. I'm not asking you to blindly accept me. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm more than a bloodline and a mate bond. Give me real problems. Let me work alongside your advisors. Judge me by results, not credentials I haven't earned. The alphas exchanged glances, conducting silent conversations through minute expressions. Your Majesty, Casimir addressed Draven. You've been uncharacteristically quiet. Because this is her fight, Draven replied. I can command your respect for me. I cannot command it for her. That she must earn herself. Risky, Thora said. What if we reject her? Then she'll work harder to prove you wrong, Draven said with complete confidence. My mate survived 23 years of systematic abuse. She's awakened power that could level cities. She's not afraid of skeptical alphas. Actually, I'm terrified, Sable interjected honestly. But I've learned that fear just means something matters. And this, she gestured around the chamber. This matters, Casimir's stern expression, cracked into something resembling approval. Very well. A test then. We have a situation that requires delicate handling. The Riverside territory has been harboring rogues against explicit orders. They claim sanctuary rights, we claim security risk. It's been deadlocked for weeks. Complex. You want me to resolve a complex territorial dispute? Sable asked incredulously. I've been here for 3 hours. We want to see how you think, Thora clarified. Not necessarily solve it, but approach it. Show us your problem-solving process. Sable considered the scenario. May I ask questions? Of course. Why are they harboring rogues? What drove these wolves rogue in the first place, Pata? Various reasons, Casimir said. Some were exiled from their packs for crimes. Others fled bad situations. So, a mix of dangerous criminals and abuse victims, Sable said slowly, wheels turning. And Riverside won't differentiate between them? They claim all wolves deserve sanctuary regardless of history. Admirable but impractical, Sable mused. You need to separate the dangerous from the desperate. Process them, individually, rather than treating all rogues as one category. She warmed to the problem. Create a vetting system. Silvered wolves can sense truth, right? I could help evaluate which rogues are genuine refugees versus threats. That would require regular visits to Riverside, Thora pointed out. So I'll visit regularly, Sable said simply. Get to know the territory. Build trust with the local alpha. Demonstrate that sanctuary doesn't mean lawlessness, but protection for those who deserve it. You'd trust her judgment on who's dangerous? Casimir asked Draven skeptically. I'd trust her judgment over most wolves I know. Draven replied. She has no political agenda beyond protecting the vulnerable. That makes her more objective than any of us. The council deliberated quietly. Then Casimir nodded slowly. Very well. Riverside is yours to manage, with our full support and resources. Prove yourself there. Thank you, Sable said, trying to hide how overwhelming the prospect felt. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't, Casimir said, but there was warmth beneath the gruff tone. Dismissed. As they left the chamber, Draven pulled Sable into an empty corridor and kissed her thoroughly. You were magnificent, he said when they finally broke apart. I was terrified, she admitted. Still am. What if I can't actually solve the Riverside situation? Then you'll learn from failure and try again, he said simply. That's all anyone can do. But later that night, as Sable stood in their chambers overlooking the valley, she felt the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders. She'd asked for this, demanded to be judged by results rather than bloodline. Now she had to deliver. A flicker of movement in the distant tree line caught her attention. Wolves prowling where none should be. Watchers in the shadows. Draven, she called quietly. He joined her immediately, following her gaze. Hunters, he said grimly. They've found us faster than expected. Good. Sable surprised them both by saying, let them watch. Let them think I'm an easy target. Because she was done being underestimated. The cursed Omega, who'd learned to survive impossible circumstances, was about to teach some very dangerous wolves why silvered bloodlines had been feared in the first place. The hunters struck 3 days later, during Sable's first official visit to Riverside territory. In retrospect, she should have expected it. Traveling away from Nightborn's heavy defenses made her the perfect target. But she'd been so focused on the rogue evaluation interviews that she'd let her guard slip. The attack came at dusk, as her small convoy traveled through a narrow pass between Nightborn and Riverside lands. One moment the road was clear. The next, shadows detached from the rocks and became wolves. But these weren't normal wolves. They moved wrong too fast, too precise, their eyes void black instead of natural gold or green. Hunters, modified through dark magic to kill silvered bloodlines. Ambush! Valeria shouted, the warrior already shifting. The 6 guards accompanying Sable formed a protective circle, but Sable could sense their fear. Whatever these creatures were, they radiated wrongness that set every natural instinct screaming. Get behind us, Valeria commanded, her wolf form bristling. No, Sable said, stepping forward instead. 3 days of accelerated training with Esme had been agonizing, but it had taught her the basics of combat application. They came for me, Quais. Let them have me. That's suicide, Valeria snarled. That's strategy, Sable corrected, already feeling her power rising. You can't fight these things effectively, they're designed to resist normal wolves. But I'm not normal. The lead hunter circled closer, its void black eyes fixed on her. When it spoke, its voice carried like wind through graves. Silvered abomination, your existence violates natural order. Come quietly, and death will be swift. Played. I've received better offers, Sable replied, buying time to assess the threat. 8 hunters, all modified, all radiating that disturbing wrongness. Her newly trained senses could perceive the magic, warping their forms, blood sacrifices, dark rituals, transformations, that destroyed everything natural about wolf nature. Last chance, the hunter growled. The pack protecting you dies if you resist. Process. That decided it. Sable had spent too much of her life watching others suffer for her existence. Valeria, protect the convoy. I'll handle them. Before the warrior could protest, Sable struck. She'd been practicing reality manipulation, small changes, subtle shifts. This was her first real combat application, and she poured everything into it. The ground beneath the hunters liquefied, physics temporarily rewritten. They sank instantly, their supernatural speed useless against terrain that refused to be solid. Before they could adapt, Sable froze the ground again, but wrong, with the hunters trapped half-submerged in stone that shouldn't exist. The lead hunter snarled, its body contorting as it tried to phase through the impossible rock. These things had been designed to counter silvered abilities they could resist reality manipulation to some degree. Plan B, Sable muttered, shifting smoothly into her wolf form. If magic wouldn't work completely, she'd supplement with pure physical force. She was on the lead hunter before it freed itself, her crystalline jaws closing on its throat. The taste was wrong corruption and dark magic instead of blood and flesh. But her silvered nature acted like purifying fire, burning away the unnatural modifications. The hunter screamed a sound no natural wolf could make and dissolved into ash. 7 remaining. They'd freed themselves now, circling with new wariness. They'd expected an untrained silvered, clumsy with new power. Instead, they faced a wolf who'd learned to fight dirty through years of survival. She's protected by the Wolf King, one hunter said. Kill her, and we provoke full territorial war. The council approved this hunt, another argued. Silvered wolves are too dangerous to exist, prove it. Then come prove it, Sable challenged, her mental voice carrying to all of them. I'm right here. They came as one, coordinated assault from all directions. But Sable had spent 3 days training specifically for this Esme, had predicted the hunters' tactics based on ancient records. She knew they'd attack simultaneously, knew they'd target joints and arteries, knew they'd try to overwhelm through numbers. She met them with fury that had been building for 23 years. Every wolf who'd hurt her, every moment of powerlessness, every second of believing herself worthless, all of it channeled into pure destructive force. Silver fire erupted from her body. Not metaphorical, but literal flames of solidified moonlight. Hunters screamed as it touched them, their dark magic burning away like fog before sunrise. Some fled. Most died. Within minutes, only ash remained of the ambush. Sable shifted back, standing amid the carnage, breathing hard. Valeria approached cautiously, awe and fear mixing in her expression. Remind me never to make you angry, the warrior said, Padaway. They threaten my people. Sable replied simply. That won't stand. But as the adrenaline faded, reality set in. She'd killed 7 sentient beings, twisted and corrupted. Yes, but still wolves once. The weight of it pressed against her chest. First kills are always hard, Valeria said quietly, seeming to understand. Gets easier. I don't want it to get easier, Sable admitted. The day killing becomes easy is the day I've lost something important. They continued to Riverside, but the mood had shifted. Word of the ambush spread fast, and by the time they arrived, the local alpha, a grizzled wolf named Frost, greeted them with new respect and concern. Hunters in the borderlands, Frost said grimly. We found their camp a mile from where they attacked. Signs indicate at least 20 more. They're organized, Valeria observed. This wasn't random. No, a new voice agreed. Esme emerged from Frost's pack house, having traveled ahead. This was the vanguard, testing her capabilities, measuring her threat level. And now? Sable asked. Now they know you're dangerous, Esme said. Which means the next attack won't be 8 hunters. It'll be all of them, every surviving hunter from the Purge, united against a common threat. How many are we talking about? Valeria demanded. In the Purge, the councils created 50 hunters, Esme said quietly. Volunteers who underwent dark rituals to become specialized killers. We just saw 8. That leaves 42, Sable finished. The number hanging heavy in the air. 42 hunters, each designed specifically to kill silvered wolves, Frost said, against one newly awakened female who's had 3 days of training. Against one newly awakened female who's mated to the Wolf King and commands the loyalty of 7 territories. Valeria corrected. They want war? We'll give them war. But Esme shook her head. Direct confrontation plays to their strengths. They're expecting armies, traditional combat. We need to be smarter. What do you suggest? Sable asked, trusting her grandmother's experience. We set a trap, Esme said, her ancient eyes gleaming with strategic calculation. Let them think you're isolated, vulnerable. Draw them to ground of our choosing. And then, she smiled, showing teeth. Then we show them what happens when you hunt something that refuses to be prey. That night, Sable sent word to Draven through the mate bond, a connection that had grown stronger each day. She felt his immediate concern, his instinct to come to her, to protect her. Asterisk, I'm safe. Asterisk, she assured him. Asterisk, but we need to talk. The hunters are coming. Asterisk, asterisk. Then we kill them all. Asterisk, his mental voice promised darkness and death. Asterisk. No. Asterisk, Sable replied. Asterisk. We do something better. We cure them. Asterisk. The idea had come to her during the fight, when her touch had purified the corrupted hunter before killing it. What if that purification could be controlled, directed? What if she could burn away the dark magic without destroying the wolf beneath? Asterisk. That's dangerous, asterisk. Draven sent back, his concern palpable through their bond. Asterisk. And compassionate, in a way they don't deserve. Asterisk. Asterisk. Maybe not. Asterisk. Sable agreed. Asterisk. But they were volunteers, right? Wolves convinced that silvered bloodlines were existential threats. They underwent those rituals believing they were protecting everyone. That makes them victims too, in a way. Asterisk. Asterisk. Victims who just tried to kill you. Asterisk. Asterisk, yes. And I'm still standing. Asterisk. She could feel his reluctant admiration through the bond. Asterisk. Come to Riverside. Bring the council. We're going to need everyone for this. Asterisk. Asterisk. On my way. And Sable? Asterisk. Asterisk. Yes? Asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk, I'm proud of you. Even when you make me want to lock you in the safest tower in Nightborn and never let you face danger again. Asterisk. Asterisk. That sounds incredibly boring. Asterisk, she replied, and felt his mental laugh echo through their connection. 2 days later, the pieces were in place. Word had been carefully leaked through channels the hunters were known to monitor. The Silvered Wolf would be conducting rogue evaluations in Riverside's main square, relatively exposed, with minimal guard presence. an irresistible target. They'll know it's a trap, Thora said during the final planning session. All 7 territorial alphas had gathered, along with Draven, Esme, and Valeria. They're not stupid. They'll know and come anyway, Esme corrected. Because they're desperate. Every day Sable lives and grows stronger makes her harder to kill. They'll take the risk. And when they come, Casimir asked. We spring our trap, Draven said, his finger tracing lines on the map spread before them. Sable visible in the square, apparently vulnerable. Hidden forces in every building, every alley, every rooftop. The moment they commit to the attack, we close the net. The goal is capture, not kill, Sable reminded them. I want them alive if possible. Why? Frost asked bluntly. They're twisted abominations trying to murder you. Because they're still wolves underneath the corruption, Sable insisted. And if I can purify that corruption, cure them of what was done to them, we turn enemies into allies. That's assuming your purification works on living subjects, Valeria pointed out. The hunter you killed during purification suggests the process might be fatal. Then I need to practice, Sable said grimly. Which is why we need captures. Test subjects who volunteered for dark magic can volunteer to be cured from it. The distaste in the room was palpable, but no one argued. They'd learned in the past days that once Sable made up her mind about protecting the vulnerable, even enemies who'd lost their way, she was immovable. When do you expect them? Thora asked. Come in. Tomorrow at dawn, Esme said with prophetic certainty. The hunters move at twilight hours, dawn and dusk, when power transitions. They'll come with the rising sun, expecting to strike before she's fully awake. Then we don't sleep tonight, Draven said. Everyone in position by midnight. No visible preparation. Nothing to spook them, Khan. We let them think they have the advantage right until the moment we don't. As the alphas dispersed to brief their forces, Draven pulled Sable aside. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. We could simply eliminate the threat. You've already proven yourself, there's no shame in choosing the safer path. There's no growth in the safer path either, Sable replied. My entire life, I survived by making myself small, unthreatening, invisible. I'm done with that. If I have this power, I'm going to use it to break cycles, not perpetuate them. Even if it puts you at risk? Especially then. She took his hand, the connection between them humming with warmth. These hunters are symptoms of a larger disease, the belief that some wolves are too dangerous to exist. If I respond to that belief with extermination, I prove them right. But if I can show mercy, offer redemption, even to those twisted by fear into monsters, she trailed off. Maybe that changes something fundamental. You're going to make an extraordinary queen, Draven said softly, terrifying, but extraordinary. I'm going to try not to get killed first, Sable corrected with dark humor. Let's focus on that immediate goal. That night, Sable couldn't sleep, despite exhaustion. She stood at the window of the quarters Frost had provided, watching the moon track across the sky. Somewhere out there, 42 corrupted hunters prepared for an assault they believed would end in her death. Tomorrow, she'd teach them the difference between an easy target and a trap baited with purpose. Dawn broke over Riverside with deceptive serenity. Sable sat in the town square on a simple wooden chair, apparently alone, apparently vulnerable. Dawning market. The morning market should have been bustling with activity, but the square stood empty, civilians, evacuated under the guise of a training exercise. She could feel the hidden forces surrounding her. Draven on a nearby rooftop, his presence a steady anchor through their bond. Valeria and her warriors, positioned in adjacent buildings. The 7 territorial alphas distributed strategically, each commanding their forces through silent mental links. And somewhere in the hidden perimeter, Esme waited with the medical teams that would hopefully have patients to cure rather than bodies to burn. Sable reviewed her training, feeling for the well of power inside her that Esme had spent days helping her access and control. The trick wasn't generating power, silvered wolves had that in abundance. The trick was precision, surgical application rather than overwhelming force. She'd been practicing on corrupted plants, animals with dark magic infections, Pantado. The purification process was delicate. Burn away the corruption without destroying the host. Too much power, and she'd incinerate them. Too little, and the dark magic would resist, potentially lashing back. Asterisk. They're coming asterisk, Draven's mental voice warned. Asterisk. North approach, moving fast. Count, 37, visible. 5 must be held in reserve. Asterisk. Asterisk. Everyone hold position. Asterisk. Sable commanded, testing her authority over the combined forces. To her relief, acknowledgments came from all sectors. They'd follow her lead, at least for now. The hunters appeared like shadows gaining substance there, one moment absent the next, their corrupted forms allowing them to phase partially between states. They surrounded the square in perfect formation, cutting off all visible escape routes. The lead hunter, larger than the others, more heavily corrupted, stepped forward. Its voice carried that distinctive grave-wind quality. Silvered abomination. You should have run when you had the chance. I don't run anymore, Sable replied calmly. I've done enough running for a lifetime. Then you die here, the lead hunter signaled, and the trap they thought they'd set snapped shut. Hunters rushed forward from all directions, their supernatural speed making them blurs of motion. Sable stood, and times pushed asterisk. Reality rippled outward from her in concentric waves, a technique Esme had called rejection, temporarily rewriting the space around her to refuse entry. The hunters slammed into invisible barriers, their momentum arrested instantly. Asterisk now. Asterisk, she commanded, and the hidden forces revealed themselves. Warriors dropped from rooftops, emerged from doorways, rose from concealed pits. The hunters found themselves surrounded, the trap they'd walked into becoming apparent. But these were creatures designed for combat. They adapted instantly, forming a defensive circle and preparing to fight their way out. Wait! Sable's voice cracked like thunder, carrying power that made even the corrupted hunters hesitate. You came here to kill me because you believe silvered wolves are too dangerous to exist. Let me offer an alternative, PTF. There is no alternative, the lead hunter snarled. You are corruption given form. The councils were right to order the purge. The councils were terrified, Sable corrected, and they channeled that fear into genocide. Prosich. But look at what that fear did to you. She gestured at their twisted forms. You volunteered for dark magic rituals that destroyed your natural wolf nature. You became the very monsters you claimed to be fighting against. We became weapons, another hunter insisted, tools to protect the innocent. You became victims, Sable said softly, used and discarded by councils that feared losing power. Tell me after the purge ended, after you'd killed all the silvered wolves you could find, what happened to you? Were you honored? Celebrated? Welcomed back into your packs? Silence. The kind of silence that confirmed everything. You were isolated, Sable continued, reading the truth in their hesitation. Too corrupted to be safe around normal wolves. Too useful to kill outright. You've spent 30 years living half-lives, neither fully pack nor fully rogue, sustained by the promise that your sacrifice mattered. She stepped toward the barrier, separating them. I'm offering you something better. A cure. There is no cure, the lead hunter said, but uncertainty crept into its voice. Pa. I cured one of your number 3 days ago, Sable said. Admittedly, he didn't survive the process, but I've been practicing since then. I can burn away the corruption without destroying the wolf beneath. I can give you back your natural forms. Why? The question came from a smaller hunter near the back. Why offer mercy to those who came to kill you? Because you're victims of the same system that almost killed me, Power, Sable said simply. You were told silvered wolves were monsters that needed to be destroyed. I was told I was cursed and worthless. Both lies designed to maintain power structures that benefit the few at the expense of the many. She looked at each hunter in turn. Purdy Force. I'm offering you a choice. Submit to purification and reclaim your true nature, or continue as you are slowly degenerating, isolated from pack life, existing only to serve councils that discarded you decades ago. Power lair. It's a trick, the lead hunter insisted, but its voice lacked conviction. Then I'll demonstrate, Sable said. One volunteer. Let me attempt purification here. Now, witnessed by everyone. Proof. If it works, you'll have proof. If it fails. She shrugged. You can resume trying to kill me. The hunters conferred mentally, their corruption allowing a twisted form of pack link. Finally, the small hunter who'd asked why stepped forward. I volunteer. I'm tired. Tired of being this thing. If death comes with purification, at least I'll die as a wolf. Asterisk. Sable. Be careful. Asterisk. Draven warned through their bond. Asterisk. This could be a trap within a trap. Asterisk. Asterisk. Trust me. Asterisk. She replied, though her own heart hammered with uncertainty. The hunter approached slowly, its corrupted form radiating wrongness that made Sable's newly awakened instincts scream warnings. She held her ground, letting it come within touching distance. What's your name? She asked softly. Your real name, from before. Ash, the hunter whispered. I was Ash of the Cliffside Pack. That was 32 years ago. Hello, Ash, Sable said. This is going to hurt. I'm sorry. She placed both hands on Ash's shoulders and reached for the purification technique she'd been practicing. Silver fire blazed from her palms, but controlled this time, directed. She could feel the dark magic resisting, could sense how it had woven itself into every aspect of Ash's being. Carefully, surgically, she began burning it away, thread by thread, layer by layer, unwinding 32 years of corruption. Ash screamed agony beyond anything physical, but Sable held firm, her power relentless but precise. The process took minutes that felt like hours. Finally, with a sound like breaking glass, the last of the dark magic shattered. Ash collapsed, and Sable caught the wolf before it could hit the ground. The creature in her arms wasn't a hunter anymore. It was a wolf, small, thin, its gray fur patchy from years of corruption, but undeniably natural. Ash's eyes, no longer void black, blinked open in confusion. I can feel my pack bonds again, Ash whispered, tears streaming down its muzzle. They're weak, distant, but there. I haven't felt them in 30 years. Silence gripped the square as the other hunters stared at their former comrade. The proof was undeniable. Purification was possible. Who else? Sable asked, her voice carrying clearly despite exhaustion from the intense magical work. Who else wants to be whole again? And they came in waves. Not all 7 hunters fled rather than risk the process. But 30 others chose purification, chose the chance at reclaiming their stolen lives. Sable worked for hours, Esme stepping in to assist with the most damaged cases. Draven remained nearby, his protective presence a constant reassurance. By afternoon, 37 hunters had been reduced to 30 natural wolves, exhausted, traumatized, but free. The 7 that fled would need to be tracked down eventually, but for now, Sable could barely stand from magical exhaustion. You did it, Valeria said, awe clear in her voice. You actually cured them. We did it. Sable corrected, gesturing to include Esme, the medical teams, the forces that had made the trap possible. This was never about me alone. The lead hunter, now revealed as a massive gray wolf named Stone, approached hesitantly. I spent 32 years believing silvered wolves were monsters. You just proved that the real monsters were the councils that created us. He dropped to one knee, the gesture awkward but sincere. If you'll have me, I pledge myself to your service. I cannot undo the past, but perhaps I can help build a better future. I accept, Sable said, helping him rise. But not as servant to master, as pack member to pack member. That's the future we're building, one where designation and bloodline matter less than character and choice. As the purified hunters were led to temporary housing where they could rest and begin the long process of reintegration, Draven wrapped Sable in his arms. She sagged against him, the adrenaline and magical exertion finally catching up. You terrify me sometimes, he murmured into her hair. The risks you take, the compassion you extend to those who'd kill you. But you're also the most magnificent thing I've ever witnessed. I'm just tired, Sable mumbled, exhaustion making her honest. Tired of cycles of violence, tired of fear determining policy. If I have power, I'm going to use it to break those cycles, even if it's dangerous. And I'll be beside you every step. Draven promised, though I reserve the right to occasionally lock you in our chambers for your own safety. You can try, Sable said with a weak laugh. I'm silvered, remember? I can phase through walls. But as they returned to Nightborn that evening, news arrived that shifted everything. Scouts reported that the 7 hunters who'd fled weren't simply running. They were traveling to the old council grounds, where the territorial councils met once yearly for major decisions, power, and they were calling for an emergency session to address the silvered threat. They're going to try to authorize another purge, Casimir said grimly during the emergency meeting, using your mercy as evidence of manipulation. They'll claim you're corrupting warriors with dark magic rather than curing them. Let them try, Thora said coldly. After what we've seen, any council that authorizes genocide will face rebellion from within. We need to get ahead of this, Sable said, pushing through exhaustion to focus. We need to present our case to the full council before the narrative is controlled by fear. The council meets in 1 week. The council meets in 1 week, Draven said. We'll need to prepare carefully. This isn't a fight we can win through force, it has to be political, persuasive. Then I'll be persuasive, Sable said with more confidence than she felt. I convinced 30 hunters to accept purification. Surely I can convince a council to choose progress over fear. Councils are often less reasonable than corrupted hunters, Esme said dryly. But yes, we try. The alternative is civil war, and that serves no one. That night, as Sable finally collapsed into bed, she sent one last thought through the mate bond to Draven. Asterisk, what if I fail? What if the council orders another purge, despite everything? Asterisk. His response came immediately, fierce and absolute. Asterisk. Then we'll face it together, and if necessary, we'll build a new system from the ashes of the old one. But you won't fail, Sable. You didn't survive 23 years of hell just to fail now. Asterisk. She held on to that certainty as sleep finally claimed her, knowing that the real battle was just beginning. Council of Territories. Met in a structure older than any pack, older than the hierarchies they'd spent centuries defending. Built from white stone that seemed to glow with its own light, the Grand Circle stood at the exact center of all territories' neutral ground, where even the most bitter enemies could meet under truce. Sable entered beside Draven, flanked by the 7 territorial alphas who'd become her unlikely allies. Behind them came the 30 purified hunters, walking proof of her claims. And scattered throughout the assembled crowds, other silvered wolves had emerged from hiding. Esme had sent word through channels Sable didn't fully understand. And they'd come. Not many, perhaps a dozen, but enough to show the council that genocide hadn't been as thorough as they'd believed. The Grand Council consisted of 21 alphas, 3 from each of the 7 territories. They sat in elevated positions, literally looking down on those who came before them. Sable recognized the symbolism and made a note to change it if given the chance. This emergency session is called to order. The eldest, an ancient wolf named Corvus, who claimed to have witnessed the first purge, intoned formally. We are here to address claims that a silvered wolf has emerged and is corrupting warriors through dark magic. That's not what's happening, Draven said immediately, his Wolf King authority carrying weight even here. What's happening is purification of warriors who were corrupted 30 years ago, by this very council's authorization. Semantics. One of the 7 fled hunters spat from where they stood as accusers. She's twisting natural wolves into servants. We've seen the results. Proud hunters reduced to grateful lapdogs. Proud hunters who volunteered to become monsters. Stone countered, stepping forward from the purified group. I was there, council members. To his. I remember the rituals, the promises that we'd be heroes. What we became was weapons you used and then abandoned. You became necessary evils, Corvus said coldly. The silvered wolves were too dangerous to exist. Your sacrifice saved countless lives. Did it? Sable asked, her voice calm but carrying clearly. Or did it save your power structure? Because from what I've learned, silvered wolves weren't dangerous to normal pack members. We were dangerous to corrupt leadership wolves who could see through lies, who could challenge unjust hierarchies, who had the power to force accountability. You admit to being a threat, another council member pounced. I admit to being a challenge to the status quo, Sable corrected. There's a difference. A threat seeks to destroy, power purified. A challenge seeks to improve. She gestured to the purified hunters. These wolves came to kill me 3 days ago. I could have slaughtered them. My power certainly allows for it. Instead, I cured them, gave them back the natural forms you stole 30 years ago. That's not the action of a threat. It's the action of someone building an army. One of the fled hunters insisted. Bind warriors to you through gratitude and dependency. Create a force loyal only to you. If I wanted an army, I have 7 territories worth of wolves already pledged to my mate, Sable said. I don't need to cure corrupted hunters to build forces. I did it because it was right. Because they deserved better than to exist as living weapons. The road to tyranny is paved with good intentions, Corvus said. Every despot in history has claimed to act righteously. And every council that authorized genocide has claimed to act for the greater good, Sable shot back. Yet here we stand, 30 years after your purge, and silvered wolves still exist. We survived, we hid, we endured. And now we're asking for the chance to prove we're not the monsters you convinced yourselves we were. Asking? Corvus's laugh was bitter. You stand before this council with the Wolf King at your side, 7 territorial alphas pledged to your defense, and an unknown number of silvered wolves revealing themselves. That's not asking. That's threatening. It's demonstrating that your attempted genocide failed, Draven interjected, and that trying again will result in civil war. Sable has support, genuine support from wolves who've seen what she's capable of and chosen to stand with her. Force more violence and you'll fracture the territories beyond repair. Is that a threat from the Wolf King? Another council member demanded. It's a statement of fact from someone who's fought too many wars, Draven replied. I unified the territories through strategic dominance, but that unity is fragile. Push too hard against a figure who's already becoming symbolic of hope for the vulnerable, and watch how quickly it shatters. The council conferred quietly, their faces showing concern. Finally, Corvus spoke again. What do you propose? We simply accept silvered wolves back into society with no restrictions? I propose accountability, Sable said. Silvered wolves are powerful, that's undeniable. But power without accountability is what created the need for us in the first place. So here's my offer. Silvered wolves operate with transparency. Kind of. We register our locations, we report our activities, we submit to oversight powers. But in exchange, we're granted the same rights as any other wolf to live, to mate, to exist, without fear of authorized murder. And if one of you becomes dangerous, uses power irresponsibly, then I deal with them personally, Sable said firmly. Silvered wolves can counter each other in ways normal wolves cannot. I accept responsibility for policing my own kind, but only if we're given the chance to exist first. You're asking us to trust you, Corvus said slowly. I'm asking you to choose progress over fear, Sable corrected. Your purge was built on the belief that some wolves are too dangerous to exist. That belief led to genocide, to the creation of corrupted hunters, to 30 years of living weapons, suffering isolation, and degradation. That belief damaged everyone it touched, silvered and normal wolves alike. I'm offering a different path, one where we work together instead of killing each other. The council deliberated for hours. Sable stood the entire time, refusing to show weakness despite exhaustion. Draven remained beside her, his presence steady. The territorial alphas formed a wall of support. And the purified hunters stood as living evidence that redemption was possible. Finally, as the sun began to set, Corvus spoke again. The council votes, all in favor of accepting silvered wolves back into society under the proposed accountability framework. Hands rose slowly, first 7, then 10, then finally 16 of 21. Not unanimous, but a clear majority. Motion passes, Corvus said, and Sable could have sworn she saw something like relief in the ancient wolf's eyes. Silvered wolves are officially recognized as legitimate members of society, subject to the registered oversight proposed. He looked directly at Sable with problems. You've convinced us. Don't make us regret it. I won't, Sable promised. None of us will. As they left the grand circle, Sable felt the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders alongside relief. She'd won this battle, but it was just the beginning. Now came the hard work of actually building the society she'd promised one, where power was balanced by accountability, where vulnerability didn't mean exploitation, where every wolf had worth regardless of designation or bloodline. 1 year later, Sable stood at the window of their chambers in Nightbourne, watching the sun rise over the valley. The past year had been exhausting, exhilarating, and transformative. The Silvered Registry now contained 43 names, more emerging every month from hiding places they'd maintained for decades. Not all were powerful like Sable, but each brought unique gifts. Together, they'd begun reshaping what it meant to be silvered. The reformed council structure was still new, still finding its balance. But already, changes were visible. Omega representation on territorial councils, protection laws for vulnerable pack members, education programs that taught true history instead of convenient myths. It wasn't perfect, progress never was, but it was happening. Arms wrapped around her from behind as Draven joined her at the window. "Thinking profound thoughts?" he murmured against her neck. "Thinking about how far we've come," she admitted. "A year ago, I was scrubbing floors in Ashenvale, believing I was cursed. Now I'm helping rewrite how entire territories function." "You're also late for breakfast," he said with amusement. "The territorial alphas are waiting. Something about the Riverside Refugee Program, expanding faster than projected." "Good problems," Sable said, turning in his arms. "The kind that mean more wolves are finding safety instead of suffering." They'd made it officially 6 months earlier, a ceremony witnessed by thousands, silvered and normal wolves together. The bond had deepened from connection to something profound, a partnership that balanced them both. Draven grounded Sable's idealism with strategic pragmatism. Sable softened Draven's dominance with compassionate wisdom. In the hallway, they passed Stone, now serving as head of hunter rehabilitation. The program he'd developed had successfully reintegrated 28 of the 30 purified hunters back into pack life. The other 2 had chosen to remain in service to Sable, claiming they felt purposeful protecting rather than hunting. "Morning, Your Majesties," Stone greeted with a smile that would have been impossible in his corrupted form. "The new arrivals from Eastern Territories are settling in well. 3 more silvered wolves among them." "Excellent," Sable said. "Make sure they know about the training programs. No one should face their power alone." The breakfast meeting was productive chaos, 7 alphas arguing passionately about resource distribution, refugee protocols, and long-term planning. A year ago, getting them to agree on anything would have been impossible. Now they functioned as a unit, still contentious, but ultimately unified in purpose. "The Silvered Education Initiative is showing results," Thora reported. "We're seeing more young wolves discover latent bloodlines and receive proper training instead of suppression." "How many so far?" Sable asked. 17 juveniles in the past quarter," Thora said. "Most with minor gifts, enhanced healing, prophetic dreams, truth sensing, nothing world-shaking but valuable. And well, Bacanes contented. Bacanes contented. Every gift matters," Sable reminded them. "We're not trying to create an army of reality warpers. We're trying to normalize silvered bloodlines so the next generation doesn't grow up afraid of what they are." After the meeting, Sable made her way to the Memorial Grove, a place she visited weekly. 37 trees stood in a perfect circle, one for each purified hunter. In the center, a larger tree had been planted in memory of Callista, the mother Sable had never known, but whose sacrifice had made everything possible. "You would have been proud," Sable said quietly, touching the tree's bark. "Your daughter isn't cursed. She's not even particularly special. But she's free, and she's using that freedom to make sure no other wolf suffers the way she did." "Talking to trees now?" Esme's voice came from behind her. "That's a new development. Talking to memories," Sable corrected, reminding myself why this matters. "It matters because you choose to make it matter," Esme said, joining her in the grove. "I have news. We've confirmed 3 more silvered bloodlines in territories that participated most heavily in the purge. They're scared to reveal themselves." "Then we go to them," Sable said immediately. "Personally, show them it's safe now." That's what I told them you'd say. Esme smiled. You leave tomorrow. Draven is already arguing that he's coming with you, despite having territorial obligations. Let him argue, Sable said with affection. He'll come anyway. The mate bond makes him physically uncomfortable when we're separated for too long. That evening, as Sable stood before the gathered pack hundreds of wolves in the main courtyard, both silvered and normal, she reflected on the journey. From cursed Omega to recognized queen, from powerless victim to protected advocate, from isolation to community. Change is uncomfortable, she said to the assembled wolves. Change requires us to question beliefs we've held our entire lives. To acknowledge that systems we accepted as natural were actually constructed and can be reconstructed better. This past year has been hard. We've had setbacks, failures, moments of doubt. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across familiar and unfamiliar faces. But we've also had victories. Wolves finding safety who would have died in hiding. Young silvered wolves learning to control their gifts instead of fearing them. Hunters reclaiming their natural forms and finding purpose beyond violence. These victories matter. Each one is evidence that a better way is possible. And some will always resist change, she continued. Some will claim we've gone too far, that we're disrupting natural order. To them, I say, natural order is what we make it. Power. For too long, natural meant the strong dominating the weak, the powerful preying on the vulnerable. We're creating a new natural one where every wolf has worth, where power comes with responsibility, where strength is measured by what you protect rather than what you destroy. The howl that rose from the gathered wolves echoed across the valley, a sound of agreement and commitment. Sable let her own voice join theirs, her silvered wolf rising to the surface, just enough to make the howl carry further, clearer. Later, in the quiet of their chambers, Draven pulled her close. You know, he said thoughtfully, when I started searching for my mate 7 years ago, I imagined finding someone powerful, yes. Someone who could stand beside me in leadership, but I never imagined finding someone who would fundamentally change how I see the world. Good change or bad change? Sable asked, though she could feel his emotions through their bond clearly enough to know the answer. Problem. The best kind of change, he said. The kind that makes me uncomfortable with how things were and excited about what they could become. He kissed her softly. Prius, you've made me a better wolf, Sable. A better leader. A better mate. You've given me the safety to become who I was always meant to be, she replied. So I think we're even. As they settled into sleep, Sable's last thoughts were of the future. There was still work to be done, territories to visit, silvered wolves to find, systems to reform. But for the first time in her life, she faced that future with confidence rather than fear. The cursed Omega they'd mocked had become the queen who protected them. The rejected wolf had become the cornerstone of a new society, and the girl who'd once believed herself worthless had discovered that sometimes the greatest power isn't in being perfect. It's in being brave enough to keep trying despite failure, compassionate enough to offer mercy to enemies, and stubborn enough to believe that change is always possible. She'd howled back at a world that tried to silence her. And in doing so, she'd shown every vulnerable wolf that they, too, could howl. That their voices mattered, power, that they mattered, and that no curse, real or imagined, could ever define them, unless they chose to accept it. The silver moon rose over Nightborn territory, illuminating a wolf who'd survived impossible odds to become something no one had expected. Not a victim, not a weapon, not even just a queen. She'd become hope itself. And hope, once awakened, could never be suppressed again. Sometimes the cruelest prison isn't built of iron and stone, but of whispers, sideways glances, and the weight of a curse you never asked to carry. But sometimes, the cursed one discovers that what everyone called weakness was actually power, waiting for the right moment to emerge. And when that moment comes, when the Alpha King howls your name across the territories, the whole world learns that some wolves are rejected, not because they're broken, but because they're destined to break every chain that holds others captive.